It comes as a surprise to many observers. Ukraine, of all countries, supports the invasion of Iran by the US and Israel. Ukraine has suffered and continues to suffer a brutal, unprovoked invasion by its massive and stronger neighbor, Russia. Their cities lie in ruins, families shattered, and every day in Ukraine is measured in drone strikes and artillery barrages. Ukraine knows this pain very well, yet they loudly and actively support the invasion of another. What's the difference between US-Israel attack on Iran and Russian attack on Ukraine? Ukraine has openly said Iran deserved what they got, and even wants them to get more. Before we say Ukraine should be ashamed of themselves, let's first look at their given reasons. Ukraine's enemy, Russia, wasn't fighting alone. Far in the east, another powerful country, Iran, supplied Russia with weapons, thousands of drones and drone technologies that were used against Ukrainian cities. Starting 2022, Iran supplied thousands of Shahed 136 kamikaze drones, which became a staple of Russian attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure. Reports from 2024 and 2025 indicated that Iran has sent hundreds of ballistic missiles to Russia, specifically from the Fateh 110 family, such as Fath 360. Iran also supplied millions of rounds of ammunition and hundreds of thousands of artillery shells, often transported across the Caspian Sea, and eventually transferred technology for the Shahed drones, allowing Russia to produce them domestically at a plant in the Alabuga Special Economic Zone in Tatarstan, reducing Russia's reliance on direct imports.
So in Kyiv, leaders began to think, if this Iranian regime actively helps our enemy, how can we ignore it? To Ukraine's leadership, that looked more than just an abstract alliance.
Right.
It looked like complicity. Ukraine says, we hate war, but we also oppose governments that fund terror or help our invaders.
So to Ukraine, Russia is their primary, direct attacker. Iran is an indirect attacker because it has materially supported Russia with drones and military systems. So weakening the alliance that helps Russia strengthens Ukraine's own defense, and showing diplomatic solidarity with US and Israel reinforces Ukraine's strategic bonds with two of its most important backers. The situation is awkward, even self-contradictory in places. Zelensky has warned that the Israel-Iran conflict could distract or slow weapons deliveries to Ukraine. In other words, they are hoping it lasts long enough for them to ward off Russia completely. Ukraine is not just using words, but is also offering to help other countries defend themselves against Iranian strikes. If you look at it, the war taking place right now, making everyone wonder if World War III is here, seems like a continuation of a war that started years ago. If this is World War III, then it's not just started, it's escalating. Europe, mostly Germany, has suffered economically after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. They lost cheap Russian oil, which triggered an inflation in the land, and had to send 39 billion euros in civilian support and more 55 billion euros in military aid to Ukraine, because they want Ukraine to win. If Ukraine loses, it means the end of European security order, a direct threat to NATO and EU. So anything that favors Ukraine's win, they are in support. But they are keeping their hands off militarily, they say. Let the US finish the job. They can't attack Russia, it's too heavy a risk. But they can attack Iran, the weapons supplier, before Iran too gets too strong for them. Now that Iran is under invasion, you'll wonder, what is Russia doing? Big Brother Russia is providing or planning to provide advanced Su-35 fighter jets, Mi-28 attack helicopters, and Yak-130 trainer aircraft to modernize Iran's aging air force. Recent reports just a few weeks ago suggest a secret deal where Russia supplies Iran with advanced Verba-Man portable air defense systems, MANPADS, to help Iran boost its defenses against low-altitude targets. Russia has been providing Iran with technology for electronic warfare, radar, and surveillance, which Iran has integrated into its defense network, like the one that reportedly failed to prevent a massive joint US-Israeli strike that resulted in the death of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. An interesting story for another day. Iran armed Russia with drones and missiles, and Russia is now
Why would Iran be blamed for selling weapons to a country that needed them? The U.S. did the same in World War II. Some argued U.S. was a neutral supplier, selling massive quantities of arms, food, and raw materials to the Allied powers, primarily Britain and France. Where's the difference?
Under modern international law, post-1945 UN Charter, the war in Ukraine is widely considered an unlawful war of aggression by Russia. In contrast, U.S. support in World War II was directed at nations defending themselves against an aggressor, Nazi Germany. And then there's the doctrine of qualified neutrality, which argues that states can assist a victim of an unlawful attack without becoming a belligerent. Because Russia is seen as the aggressor, Iran's support for Russia is viewed as complicity in war crimes, whereas Western support for Ukraine is seen as assisting in self-defense. Then there's the double standard argument. Many observers, particularly in the global South, argue that if Western countries can supply billions in weapons to Ukraine, Iran should theoretically be able to sell to its own allies. However, Western powers counter this by noting that their sales support a country's sovereignty, while Iran's sales support a country attempting to overthrow another's sovereignty. Iran denies being part of the war, claiming their military cooperation with Russia is a long-standing bilateral relationship that predates the 2022 invasion. But reports from Western intelligence and security officials indicate that Russia and Iran signed major arms contracts in October 2021, roughly 4 months before the invasion. While the contracts were signed in 2021, many of the actual physical deliveries of these specific missiles were tracked via satellite and cargo manifests, arriving in Russia throughout 2022 and 2024. But it's not the first time these two are cooperating. Since 2015, Russia and Iran have cooperated closely in the Syrian civil war to support the Assad regime. During this period, there were records of military technical cooperation, including shared intelligence centers and the use of Iranian air bases by Russian bombers. Reports indicated that Iran provided communication systems, anti-tank missiles, and sniper rifles to regional forces that coordinated directly with the Russian military on the ground. But historically, the relationship wasn't always like this. It was reversed. Russia was the primary supplier to Iran from the 1980s to 1990s. 1990s, Russia sold Iran billions in equipment, including MiG-29 fighters, T-72 tanks, and Kilo.
Do you think Operation Epic Fury, as US calls it, is an indirect war at Russia to strip it off its most significant military partner? As much as Ukraine supports and cheers the invasion of Iran, Russia's supplier, President Zelensky has expressed concern. A prolonged war in Iran could divert US air defense systems like Patriot missiles away from Ukraine.
Without modern Patriots, Russian aircraft can fly closer to the front lines to drop devastating glide bombs with impunity in Ukraine. It's an uncomfortable, tangled-up situation, a massive geopolitical spiderweb, a high-stakes race against time, with U.S. betting that they can destroy Iran's military fast enough that the supply chain to Russia breaks before Ukraine's defenses run dry.
Will Russia step in to physically defend Iran? This is up next on Uncome Tales. You don't want to miss it.